everyone, this is Heather. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got a mixed media project for you and we're going to be making a Halloween themed shadow box. So I'm starting off with just a cardboard box that I got something in. I don't even remember what I got. It's a nice sturdy cardboard box. You could also use some of those balsa wood boxes that you could find at the craft store. Tim Holtz also makes little like boxes and drawers. You could use something like that, anything that you have on hand, but I love to be able to upcycle packaging that I already have instead of throwing it away or recycling it. So the first thing I want to do is to trace a piece of paper for my background. So I've got a sheet of paper from just an old vintage book. You can find these like if your library has a sale, at antique stores, online at places like Etsy and eBay. I use them a lot in my mixed media, and I found one that had a little story about pumpkins, so I thought it would be perfect for the background. And I'm just gonna lay my box over top, kind of line it up a little bit, and take my pencil and trace around the box. Now I'm just going to cut along those lines, and I'm going to cut in just a little bit because there is some width to this cardboard, just a little fit along the back of that box. And now that it's trimmed down, I just want to make sure that it fits inside the back of my box, and it does. I've grabbed a piece of scrap paper, a blending brush, and some vintage photo distress ink from Tim Holtz, and I want to add some color to the edges of this page. It just kind of gives it like a nice distressed vintage look. So I'm just going to go around all the edges of my page. To add some color to my box, I'm going to be using some white gesso, some pesto color Adirondack acrylics, and some rock candy distress crackle paint. This is from Tim Holtz. So the first thing that I want to do is take a sponge brush, and I've squeezed a little bit of the gesso and the paint onto a plastic palette, and I'm just going to apply that gesso. It's going to do two things. It helps the paint to stick to your surface, but it's also going to give a little bit of an undercoat to your paint. So you do not have to be perfect with this. If you want some of the cardboard or wood to show through, that'll work really nicely as well. So between each step of paint that I'm going to apply, I want to make sure that it's completely dry. So I'm going to take my heat tool on a low setting and just quickly dry this gesso. With that dry, I'm going to apply some of the Adirondack paint, and one of the things I really like about this paint is it has like a little bit of a shimmer to it, so it adds a really pretty touch. I'm not going to completely cover the white with the green. I want a little bit of it to show through. Once I'm happy with the green, I'm going to go back to my heat gun on low, and I'm going to set this green paint. Now I'm ready to move on to the Distress Crackle paint, and the nice thing about this is it has a little handy brush inside, and I'm just going to streak that on top. You want this to be fairly thick in some sections. The thicker it is in that area, the more crackle that you'll get. So just wipe that over. And they do recommend that you let this air dry for a better crackle, but just for time purposes, I am again going to use my heat tool and dry that up. So I hope you're able to see on camera that I've got kind of this great wood grain, crackly kind of texture on there, and the more that it dries, the better it's going to begin to look. I do want to add a little bit more color, so I'm going back to that vintage photo and my blending brush, and I'm going to add a little bit of this brown ink, especially around the edges. It just gives it that really nice look of wood texture and some aging. I like to apply the ink a little heavy just because it is going to dry a little bit lighter over top of all this paint and crackle. So then once again, I'm going to take my heat gun on low and I'm going to heat set that ink. And I think it is so amazing now that this plain cardboard box looks like old rusted textured wood. So I'm going to do all 4 sides of the outside of my box as well as the inside. I'm not going to worry about the back panel. I'm going to go in just a little bit because my paper is probably a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing on all these sides. So I've finished painting all the sides of my box. I'm really happy with the way that it looks. It's just amazing how it looks like just old painted wood. I have taken a circle punch and some yellow cardstock and punched out a little circle for a moon. I'm going to pick up some more of that same distress ink and just lightly go around the edges of my moon. I have applied some adhesive to the back, and I'm just going to place that in the upper right hand corner of my piece of paper just to give it the look of a full moon. Out of black cardstock, I have die cut 3 shapes. I have a witch's hat, a bat, and a spider web. These dies are from Stampin' Up! On my scrap paper, I've got a black wink of Stella pen, and I'm going to add some nice shimmer to all of these die cuts. And I hope you can see on camera what a really great shimmer that adds. I'm going to turn my black spider web over, and using a glue pen, I'm going to apply some adhesive to the back. And now I'm going to place the spider web up in the corner of my paper. I've applied adhesive to the back of my paper, and I'm just going to place that down inside my box and push down really well. I've got a package of paper doll images from Tim Holtz, and I've pulled out one that I thought would make a really great witch. And I wanted to give her sort of a tinted photo look, so I'm using alcohol-based markers. I'm using light and dark old olive from Stampin' Up! And I'm just going to go over her dress with the lighter shade. And it's just going to add like a cool tinted look to it. And in some of the sections, I'm going to take the darker marker and add just a little bit of shadow. And then just like if you were doing your stamped images, you can go back in with that lighter and kind of blend those together. This is not a smooth look. It actually looks very stained and tinted like an old photograph would. With a dark pink pirouette marker, I'm going to add some color to her cheeks. With dark crumb cake, I'm going to add a little bit of color to her shoes and also the bands on her dress. So now I think she's got a little bit more of a colored tinted vintage photo to her. Now I want to add the witch's hat to her instead of her hat, so I'm just going to take my scissors and trim away the hat, leaving her hair showing and just a little bit at the top of this hat. With an X-Acto knife, I'm going to cut a bit of a slit in the die cut of my hat. I'm going to slip the top of this in there and see how that looks. I've widened the slit just a little bit and slipped that up, and I think that that looks really nice. So I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive behind her head and tape that hat in place. I want to add a little bit of sparkle to her necklace, so I'm just taking a little green gem and applying that down. Next, I wanted to give my little witch some little bat wings. So I'm just taking my scissors and cutting those bat wings in half. I'm going to apply a little bit of adhesive to the back of her shoulders. I'm going to turn this over. Just kind of figure out where I would like those little wings to sit. So now she's kind of a fairy bat. So next I want to make a little urn for my scene, like she's kind of standing in a cemetery. So I've got one of these trophies from Tim Holtz, and it's bright and silver and shiny, and I do not want it to look that way. I want it to look aged and dark and patina. So I'm taking some sandpaper, and I'm just going to rough off some of that silver finish. And it's kind of black underneath, so a little bit of that black is going to shine through. So this gives it an aged look, but it also will help the paint stick that we're going to apply to it. Gives it a little bit of a tooth. Now that I've got my trophy kind of scuffed up, I'm going to go back to that same green paint that I used on my box, and I'm just going to paint right over that, and it's going to give it that neat aged patina. And now it looks like a cool old urn that's been sitting out for a long time. Next I wanted to add a little tag to my urn. So I've just got a little cream colored tag that I picked up in a package at the craft store. I use that same brown ink and age up the edges. And then I've taken some small alphabet letters and spelled out RIP, and using some black memento ink, I'm going to stamp those on my tag. And I'm going to take my tag, take the ends, and tie them around one of the handles on my urn. Now I'm just going to kind of trim off the ends. So I want to add some greenery to the bottom of my box. So I've just got a bag of Spanish moss. You can pick this up in the floral department at any craft store. I'm going to apply a good amount of glue to the inside bottom of my box. And because my glue does not want to squeeze out the top, I'm just going to grab another foam brush and just put a bunch of glue on the bottom of my box. And you could also use hot glue for this, but to be honest with you, I can't find my hot glue gun, so we're just going to use what we have on hand, which is Elmer's. I'm going to pull off some of this Spanish moss, and it does get a little bit messy. And then I'm just going to spread it out along the bottom of my box and just push that down into my glue. I've taken a little bit of paper towel and I have stuffed it down inside the top of my urn, and I'm going to place a little bit of glue around the edges just to make sure that the moss that I put inside is going to stick. So I'm just going to pull off another chunk of this, kind of wad it up into a ball and poke it down in my urn. On the back of my urn, I've applied a heavy-duty glue dot. I'm also going to put some more of that Elmer's glue on the bottom, and I'm going to place this down in my scene. And I'm going to push it along the back wall there so that that glue dot grabs a hold. Now I'm ready to put my witch into this scene, and I don't want her to be totally flat against the backdrop. So I'm going to kind of measure about the height that I would like her away from the box onto a strip of black cardstock, and I'm just going to fold that over a few times. I'm going to take my scissors and cut that off. And then I'm going to form this into a box. I'm going to put some adhesive on this side. And close up my little box. And she will rest on that in the back of the box. I'm going to place some more adhesive on this little cardstock box that I've made. And I'm going to put that on the back of my witch. I'm going to apply some more adhesive to the other side, and then I'm going to place her in my scene. And now with that spacer behind her, she's able to kind of stand up out of the scene. Also in the floral department at the craft store, I picked up some cool little mushrooms. So I'm just going to dip the little stick in some glue and place that down in my scene. I also found some really cool skull beads in the Halloween department. So I'm going to put a bunch of glue on the back of that and place that in my scene as well. So that just adds like a cool spooky touch to the bottom of the scene there. One of the last things I wanted to add to my scene is one of these labeled drawer pulls from Tim Holtz. And also from my same little vintage book, I found a little poem, and I'm going to be cutting out "We Daren't Go," which I thought was just a nice little kind of spooky sentence there for my scene. And I'm just going to trim this off. I've trimmed that sentiment down. I'm going to take a little bit of my glue and apply it to just a little strip of black cardstock. And I'm going to apply some more glue on the inside of this pull and then place my sentiment inside. These pulls come with brads, so I have applied those inside, and I've put some heavy duty glue dots on the back, and I'm going to just place that on the very top of my box. And here's our finished Halloween decor mixed media shadow box. I really think it turned out nice and spooky. I love all the vintage textures to it, the peeling paint, and the nice little touch of the skull at the bottom. I think it creates a fun and spooky scene. I hope that you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to check out my channel, and I hope you have a spooky day. This is Heather. Bye.